In this video, I'm going to break down one of the most effective, one of the most simplest, and one of the most damaging kicks you need to learn to throw. And that is the oblique kick to the knee. I first learned about that kick from a Bruce Lee book. When I was about 9 or 10, I bought a book and he showed you in a lot of his sequences, he used that oblique kick to the leg quite a lot. And I fell in love with that kick ever since. Now that kick probably dates way back before Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee was the one who I learned it from. In MMA, it's still underutilized, except for, of course, John Jones made it popular, and he's still the one to continue to use it and continue to throw it. Robert Whitaker has been seen to throw it, as well as, of course, the finish that Roundtree did by throwing the oblique kick to the leg, to the knee, and finishing the fight. But besides that, you still see a few fighters throw it here and there, but overall, you just still don't see enough of that kick being thrown in MMA. And when it comes to a street fight, the oblique kick is always there for you. It's easy to learn, it's simple to master, and it's highly damaging, it's highly effective. And you don't need the dexterity and the mobility and the flexibility in your hips. If you can't throw your front kicks, your high kicks, you can execute your oblique kick and do a lot of damage with the least amount of energy. So in this video, I'm going to break down how to throw it, how to drill it to master it, and how to begin using it. And this oblique kick has different names. It goes by oblique kick, it goes by a push kick to the knee, side kick to the knee, a front kick to the knee, but we're simply going to call it oblique kick. That's what it's mostly and famously known for. Now this oblique kick has 3 different variations. I'm going to show you the most effective one, the one that I like to use, and the one that I learned from Bruce Lee, and the one that Roundtree did in his fight, which is a side kick, a lead side kick to the knee. This is the best one to throw, and it's the most damaging one. The other 2 oblique kicks are thrown more as a front kick, either from the front leg, striking down, or from a rear leg, going to the knee. These 2, the front or the rear front, are still very good, but they're not as damaging as the one we can throw as a side kick, the front side kick, the oblique kick to the knee. And if you can only focus on one, it should be the front side kick to the knee. Now it doesn't mean the other 2 are not effective. John Jones is a master at throwing that rear front to the knee constantly, as well as using that front kick to the knee. Those 2 are very good, and we're going to cover them at the end. I'm going to touch up on those, but mainly in this video we're going to focus on the best one, the most damaging one, which is a side kick to the knee. Now there are 2 primary uses for the oblique kick. Number 1 is to maintain distance and range. Your legs are your longest weapons, so you can use that oblique kick, that side front oblique kick, to maintain distance and maintain range. So if you don't want them to come in and close the gap, you just simply pump that side kick, that oblique kick, to the knee, to the leg, and just keep them at bay. Every time they come in, you just pump that oblique kick and just keep them at bay. So they step in, bam, you land it every time. And it allows you to move around, maintain range, and just keep them at bay without them ever getting into punching range to execute their plan. So essentially, you're kind of using this oblique kick almost like a jab. So instead of jabbing, for the same purpose, to keep distance, so to keep range and to keep them away from you, now you're just using this oblique kick, and you can cause a lot of damage even if you're just flicking it, if you're just touching their knee, and just constantly keeping range and distance, just throw that oblique kick to keep them away. Just flicking it like that, just like a jab, already could cause damage to their knee and just prevent them from coming in. Every time they step in, trying to get distance, you just pump that oblique kick and just keep them at bay. Great way to keep range and distance, especially for somebody who's bigger and they're just trying to get a hold of you. Just maintain range and use your longest weapon and pump that oblique kick to the knee. Also, if they're very aggressive and they're trying to come in very strong on you, if you land that kick just as simple, without any power, without any kind of drive through, and pumping that oblique kick, if they come in too aggressively and you land that kick, that could do a lot of damage just simply by having their body force moving forward and you're meeting them and you're striking that oblique kick to the knee at the same time. So their force moving forward with your simple keeping them at range, keeping them at bay, colliding together, can create a lot of damage. So that's the first way, to maintain range, to maintain distance, keep them at bay, and if they're too aggressive, you can keep them away from you. The second way is to actually throw it with intention to damage. So instead of just keeping distance and keeping them away as they're rushing, just pumping, you are throwing it with intent to damage. So this way you are actually driving through and trying to cause damage to that knee, trying to strike down and just slice through and damage their tendons, damage their knee. So remember, you either use it to maintain range and maintain distance just by simply flicking, moving around, and just pumping that side, front, oblique kick. Just keep them at bay. Or you actually planting your feet down and trying to drive through and cause damage. Now, when it comes to actually throwing it, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. The first thing is you need to chamber your leg. And chambering means you're going to lift up your front leg as you're about to throw a side kick. Now, instead of throwing a side kick to the body, you're going to chamber and you're going to drive down at an angle, at a diagonal angle, almost like 45 degrees, and you're going to deliver your kick, your side kick, right to the knee. The target you want to hit, if their knee is facing forward like this, you want to hit right above that knee, right where the quads meet the knee and the tendons, right here, right above the knee. If their knee is slightly turned to the side, you can go ahead and actually throw your side kick, throw that oblique kick to the tendons right where the knee is, or right above it. So it's always going to be right above. If their knee is turned slightly, then you can go ahead and target where the knee is, right where the tendons are, or right above it. So this is your target area on the side. This is your target area in the front. And if you get this angle right here on the inside, then of course you can do the same thing as on the other side by throwing it right above it, or right where the knee is, right where the tendons are. The part of the foot that you want to hit is right on the instep, right here, maybe a little closer to the heel, so you can utilize the full force by driving it down with that oblique kick. So you're going to chamber, then you're going to drive down at a 45 degrees, slicing it all the way down to the ground, diagonally, and then you're going to bring it back, rechamber it, and then set it down. So that's the proper technique. You have to chamber it in order to get that drive through, that diagonal slice down, and now you gotta rechamber it and bring it back. As you chamber and as you throw down diagonally at a 45-degree angle, you wanna slice down, you wanna drive through to create that maximum damage to the knee. So when you throw it, use your hips and kind of slightly twist. Sometimes you can even twist on your rear leg to get that full drive through. Now, when you throw in that kick, you want to lean back, because if they're coming in very aggressive, which oftentimes they will be, they're coming in and they're going to be throwing down punches. You're going to be chambering, throwing that kick, and you're leaning back, so their punches can't touch you. And of course, keep your hands up as you're doing it, so that way if something does hit, if they extend and they lean forward, so none of those punches can hit you, and if they do, you'll be nicely protected. And the leaning back with your hands up, that's just going to give you double defense. So remember, fight stance, chamber, drive through, diagonal, 45 degrees, you chamber back, hands up, lean back, extra power, twist with your hips, and on your rear foot. So the maximum power, the maximum damage and drive through will be caused from that hip rotation and that leg pivot that you're doing and driving through. You have to drive through. You have to drive down diagonally. You're not just kicking. Drive through, get that power, and just kick through their knee, right above their kneecap or to the side where the tendons are. And this, you want to drive through all the way to the ground. And if you're throwing it more for speed, just kind of keeping range and distance, then you don't have to twist. You can just flick it, flicking it, but also chambering and rechambering, leaning back, but throw it more as a flick and jab. When you're just pumping that jab, do the same thing, then you got to do it quick, you got to snap it, but still chambering, still leaning back. For setups with that kick, now you could throw it individually. If you time it right and kind of keep your hands up, and as they're coming in for distance and range, they're usually not going to see that kick coming. They're focused on your arms and they're focused on closing the distance. It's just like a jab. You're just using it, single punch. So you don't have to often set it up, but just simply being quick with it, flicking it, and using movement to hide your range, to hide your distance, and to hide that kick. And for the one with power, where you're just driving through and just damaging that knee as much as you can also throw it individually. Oftentimes, they're not going to be able to see it, they're not going to anticipate it, so you can kind of use your arms, kind of right there, maybe touch their arms, maybe grab their wrist, and you can just drive through, but just grabbing and throwing a single kick without any setups for punches or any setups with other kicks. However, of course, you're going to be more effective by using your jab, using your cross, either before to set up that kick, or you use that that kick to set up your punches. So for example, if you're using it to flick, to keep distance, to keep that, that range, just pumping, and then you can use it to throw your jab after, maybe jab cross, and other different punch combinations. I've covered it in volume 1 and volume 2 of Striking Fundamentals. So you just simply using it as a jab, maybe along with the jab, and then when you time it, when you see an opening, when you see the right opportunity, come back in and you have your jab, you have your cross, maybe you throw your oblique kick and then come back with a cross, hook. You have so many different combinations you can throw, but essentially you're using this flick oblique kick to the side, that side oblique kick, as a way to set up your punches right after. And then of course you can reverse it. You throw your punches first and then you can follow up with a kick. Usually the best way is if you're throwing it the lead. Let's say I'm gonna throw a cross, a hook, and then I follow up with the same side that my punch went. So my lead hand, my last lead hand punch, let's say a hook, just positions it very nicely to throw that lead oblique kick to the knee. If you're gonna throw a cross or maybe a hook, you kind of have to reposition and rechamber and throw it. There's a slight pause. It can still work. Depends how close you are, depending if you hit them. But oftentimes, if you're just trying to execute a punch combo, the best way is to kind of follow up when your lead hand lands with an uppercut, with a hook, with a jab, and then just throw that oblique kick right after. It could also work opposite hand, and when you throw your cross, your hook, you rechamber, and you throw that kick right after. It's just a matter of drilling different combinations and just seeing opportunities as they open up. And of course you can combine. You can start off with punches, kick, follow up with more punches, or vice versa. Start off with a kick, bam, bam, and again. Now for the few of you who have the dexterity, the speed, the flexibility, and experience of kicking, you can combine it with other kicks. So for example, you can throw your flick kick or your power kick to the knee, that oblique kick, cause damage, and then come back and go side kick. Or you can go vice versa. You can go side kick first and then go oblique kick to the knee. Very effective because you're throwing one side kick and then they're expecting another side kick and then you're going right to the knee. Oftentimes when you're throwing your side kick, they don't get hit as much and they say, okay, now it's my turn. They come in and you're already throwing that oblique kick. And that's where their force coming in meets your leg kick right above the knee and just causing damage. Additional ways to utilize this kick is if you're in close. So if you're just tying them up, you can grab their hands, their wrists, and if the opportunity presents itself, you can just take your leg, you can either kick it right above their knee, or sometimes you can even get that instep, that damaging shot that you can place right here in the tendons, because now you get to actually kind of catch them in such positions where you can just either kick it down, or if the opportunity presents itself, you can just simply step down and just go all the way to the ground, just collapsing their knee. So you could use it when you're a little closer, just stomping it down or just pressing it down. So I don't want you to just think that these kicks are perfect for distance and range control, which they are, but they also could be utilized when they're in close. Another variation is you can do a jump side oblique kick to the knee. So when you get that range, when you get that distance and you want to close that distance faster, you can do a nice lunge forward, that jump kick, and cover a lot of distance and just hit that knee. Again, a lot of times most people are not going to anticipate, they're not going to expect you lunging forward and just kicking their knee. Most people don't, so they're not going to actually expect you to lunge forward and go to the knee. But this covers a lot of distance, especially if you just kind of, paw, just kind of flick your fingers, your jab towards the face, and just hide your step, your jump, and go right to the legs, right to that knee. Great use, great quick offense, and just target that knee better. Now I want you to keep few defensive, very good techniques in mind when you are doing this. Don't be wild. Don't keep your hands down. Don't just kind of, kick and just be lackadaisical about it. Make sure you have the intent, you know exactly what you're doing. Keep your hands up, lean back with your body whenever you're using that kick alone or with other punches. Set it up properly and just maintain proper technique, proper balance, proper range, distance, and be very deliberate, be very methodical. Don't be sloppy. And the way you drill is the way you're going to fight. So drilling this, make sure you keep those protective points in mind. Good fight stance, nice and loose, and chambering, leaning back and driving through. If you need power, rotate with your hips, rotate on the rear leg, bring back your hands to your chin tucked, and just keep your technique tight. When it comes to drilling and mastering your oblique front side kicks, start with shadow boxing. This is where you get the technique down, the speed, the precision, and the movement. Start either on a rep-based system where you just throw in kicks, flicking it, driving through, proper body mechanics, proper technique, and do it for reps, such as 5 sets of 10 kicks, maybe 5 sets of 20 kicks, just putting the repetitions in. Or one of my favorites is a round-based system, so where you put 2 or 3 minutes on the clock with 1 minute break, you just give yourself a number of rounds, such as 3 to 4 to 5 rounds. And within that round, within those minutes, within each round, you just moving around and you're shadow boxing and just throwing that oblique kick, throwing it, flicking it, and just kind of putting the reps in constantly, monitoring your body position, your technique, where your hands are, if you're leaning back, and just visualizing them coming in, and shadow boxing around your imaginary opponent. After you've sufficiently drilled reps for kicks only, then you can introduce some punches either before or after, depending on what you want to drill and what you want to focus on. And then, of course, if you want to drill and get good at range, at distance, and knowing exactly where you need to be for that kick to land, you gotta use the heavy bag. On the heavy bag, you can actually have some feedback, get that range, and get to where you need to be, where your body needs to be in order to have that full extension on that oblique kick in order to hit it. Common mistake for a lot of beginners is they're too close. Like I said, you could throw that kick when you're in close. Most of the time, you're not going to be there. If you are in close, you're just going to be kind of pressing down, maybe just seeing it and just using it right then and there. But most of the time, the oblique kick is thrown at a distance. So you need to know exactly where you need to be in order to deliver that. And the heavy bag gives you that ability, gives you that drilling repetition. So you gotta have a bag that's long enough that you can actually kick to the knee, to the oblique. So this is just right there. So I would have to be kicking right somewhere right below, almost at the bottom of the bag. If your bag is not low enough, you have to hand it down a little bit more or get yourself a bigger, longer bag. And then do the same thing. A rep-based system, do a number of reps and number of sets, or do a round-based system for so many minutes where you're just working those kicks alone, drilling, driving through, putting those repetitions in, getting power, flicking it, and then of course introducing either punches before or after or both. And also don't forget, if you have the dexterity, flexibility in your hips, introducing the double kicks where you throw maybe a side kick and then a oblique kick, or vice versa, when you just throw an oblique kick and then a side kick, as well as the lunging forward oblique side kick to the knee. Another way you can utilize a heavy bag if you don't have that length to kind of kick down, if your bag is too small or you cannot hang it lower, is set a bag up against something and you can use it right here. It's not going to go back and forth and kind of give you that range and give you that ability to gauge range and distance, how far you need to be to have that the kick fully extended, which is so useful when the bag kind of swings back and forth. You can kind of gauge yourself where you need to be to throw that kick with full extension. With this, you can still drill that power and that distance. The bag will just be stationary. But in this one, you can really drive through and not have to worry about the bag swinging back and forth. And you can just find that distance and begin to drill it. And just get that chambering and that rotation down really well. And drill that drive through, those hips turning and that rear leg turning to get that extra power, and driving through diagonally downwards towards the ground 45 degrees. This is also really good for the jump oblique kick, and just find that range, how far you need to be and how much you need to cover. And of course, don't forget about your flick, your fast side oblique kick. So here, instead of just driving through, trying to cause the maximum amount of damage, driving with full power, here you just simply kicking it, just to keep range. One small tip that's gonna make a big, huge difference. When you drill, don't look where you're going to kick. If you do, it could be used as a feint, but usually guys look where they're going to kick and they kind of drill by looking at where they're kicking or punching. You want to not do that. You want to look straight in the eyes or I usually look right here in the clavicle, right below the chin. And then when you're drilling, that's where you look. You just look down that clavicle, and then you kick, or you punch, or you do whatever. Don't look down when you're drilling this, by just looking exactly where you're throwing. But then for advanced guys, of course, you can use that as a way to feint. You know, once you've thrown a few kicks, then you can just look down. They think you're about to throw where you're looking, pow! So once you get the look down, where you're not telegraphing where you're kicking by looking at it, you can go ahead and actually use it to feint by looking where you're going to be kicking, where you're going to be punching, making them think that's where you're going to throw, and then throw it somewhere else. And very last, you have your other two oblique kicks. Now, I don't like to throw them as much, and I prefer to use the front side kick. That's my favorite one. That's the one I recommend that you start with. That's the one I recommend that you actually just stick with and master it. Even if you never kicked before, this is the perfect kick to use. The other perfect kick to use for a street fight, of course, is a groin kick. That's for another video. But there are other two oblique kicks. One of them is thrown from a front, almost like a front kick, but you're just using it as an oblique kick because you're targeting the same exact spot, and you are turning your toes and turning your leg, opening up your hips, so you can get more of that, more of the foot landing on the knee. Instead of throwing it straight, you want to turn your hips over and throw it right at that same spot. But also remember, chambering, you have to chamber your front as well as the next one that I'm going to show you, which is the rear front. But in this variation, you're just simply going to be raising your leg, your knee going up, and then you're going to be stomping down, driving your kick down, opening up your hips so you can get that reach and actually hit with a much larger target, throwing it as a front oblique kick. All the important points remain: hands up, you gotta lean back so they don't hit your back. But this one, you're just simply targeting their front leg, front oblique kick, chambering, driving down, bringing it back in your fight stance. And the other one is thrown as a rear front oblique kick. So in this way, John Jones does this a lot. Here, you are using it by chambering and throwing it as a front kick, but you're coming down, also opening up your hips, angling your foot, so a larger target of your foot can hit the oblique part of the knee right above it, and you're just driving it down, using it as a front rear oblique kick. So great two variations you can introduce: front or rear, and then bringing it back to your fight stance. Drill this in shadow boxing, making sure you open up your hips, hands up, lean back, make sure you chamber, drive down, diagonal strike. Drill it in shadow boxing. Of course, you can introduce your punches afterwards by setting up your kick with punches, punches with kicks, and then of course transition on the bag. Throwing your front oblique kick and your rear, and drilling that power, drilling that range, getting some feedback. So these two could also be introduced, but again, make sure that your side oblique, your front oblique side kick is going to be your go-to. That's the best one. That's the one that's going to cause the most amount of damage, and it's the simplest one and the easiest one and the most damaging one to learn and to begin to use. One more important thing we have to talk about is the stance approach to all three of these oblique kicks. So for the one that I like the most, the one we covered the most, the front side oblique kick, the stance that's required to pull that off efficiently with speed and with maximum power without telegraphing too much is the traditional bladed narrow karate stance, or the taekwondo stance, where your feet are aligned together and you're more sideways. This is the best stance for side kicks, and it is the best kind of body position for the oblique side kick. Now, I don't like using this. I don't like the stance for fighting. I am more traditional, where I have my hips and my legs a little wider so I can put more power, more speed into my punches, and I can defend takedowns while allowing me to move more laterally to each side. For me, this is the better fight stance. This is the one I love. This is the one I use. A little bit more open with my hips and just kind of be ready for takedowns and to strike and kick. Now that kind of takes away the speed and the fluidity and the power of that oblique side kick for me to deliver. So what I do is I hide it in movement. So I love the oblique side kick so much, but I can't traditionally use it if I'm standing like this. I can just from here throw it. I have to reposition my hips, I have to kind of line up, and then I have to throw it. To effectively use the oblique side kick, you have to hide it in movement. So if your traditional fight stance is just like mine, more kind of boxer, MMA style, ready to defend takedowns, you just have to move. You just have to move and then hide that oblique kick by moving and then positioning yourself in a more narrow bladed stance so you can deliver that kick. So just move around and then kind of already position myself in a more narrow bladed approach so I can move quicker and I can throw that kick more effectively, fluently, with power and speed that it's required. Now that's for you to use that kick on the go, in movement, kind of like using for range and distance, as well as setting up your punches in order to deliver the side oblique kick. But if you are tied up, or if you're more stationary and kind of like you already have them and you want to use that kick, just kind of drive through. You can just pick up your leg and just drive through. You can be in any stance you want, as long as you shoot that target and you're close enough, and then you just either step on it to kind of bend their knee backwards, or you drive through. For the other two oblique kicks, for the front oblique kick or for the rear front oblique kick, these you can throw them when you are more in a regular kind of fighter stance, boxer stance, when you have your hips a little bit more wide open. Those are perfect because your hips are already open for you to deliver those two, since you have to twist and open up your hips more in order to twist your leg to get more of that surface area of the foot to deliver the oblique kick. So for the other two, you don't need to be more bladed and you can be in your traditional MMA fight stance.